Good morning and welcome back to my channel. I'm popping on here this morning in response to the lovely Emily Norris, who, if you don't know, is a YouTube mummy vlogger. She actually lives in a nearby town to me, a fellow Essex girl, although not originally, but she has just filmed a new mummy tag video. So I thought that I would come on my day off in fresh mummy attire. I have just done a workout, dropped the kids to school, and I'm going to crack on with the laundry and the rest of my day. So I thought I would come on as I am and film my response to her mummy tag. So if you don't know how a tag video works, basically somebody invents it, creates it, in this case Emily. She has come up with a list of questions which she has asked herself and answered, and then everyone else, she's invited all the other mums out there to answer the questions themselves, record their own videos and share the tag. So here goes. This is my answers to Emily's questions. So her first question is favourite mummy hack. Now for me, I've got two slightly older children. They're not tiny anymore. So for me, my favourite hack at the current time has to be setting alarms on my phone. Most specifically around about bedtime, when my kids are very, very clever, take themselves off to their room, be super secret squirrel and quiet about whatever they're doing. So I throw myself into chores or work or things downstairs and don't hear them, and therefore completely forget about them. And then quite often I look at the clock, realise it's 8, 9 o'clock at night and neither of them are in bed. So that no longer happens in this house. I have alarms on my phone for getting pyjamas on, coming off electricals and going to bed. Number 2 is most embarrassing mummy moment. Now I have to admit I've been quite fortunate through my mummying career in that I haven't had too many embarrassing moments. Either that or I've had loads and I've chosen to forget about them. But I can remember one moment. My next door neighbours in our old house bought a trampoline. And now I haven't been on a trampoline since I was a child, when I used to do an awful lot of proper trampolining. So I would go on the big flatbed white trampolines. I could do all of the moves, the somersaults, all the different jumps, go on my back and my front and everything else. So I thought I would have a go on this trampoline. Obviously it would all come back to me. So with my kids and my neighbour's kids and my neighbour all watching, on I get onto this trampoline. I jump up and down a few times. I decide I'm brave enough to do a seat drop, so when you go down on your bottom with your legs out, and my bum hits the floor underneath the trampoline. So it couldn't take my weight. The whole thing collapsed and I went straight through the trampoline. It was embarrassing and it really hurt. Question number 3 is, what part of the day do you love the most? For me, this is when I have done the school run after school, brought the kids home, got them sorted, they've got changed, they've done their homework, whatever else, got all the boring chores out of the way. I've cooked them dinner, they've sat down to eat it, and then there's that quiet time between dinner and bedtime. It's that time when I said to you, it could go really, really quiet and you could quite easily forget them. They take themselves off, they do their own thing, and I can just sit on the sofa and do whatever I like. Now I should choose that time to catch up on a little bit of admin. I don't. 9 times out of 10 it's when I'm catching up on videos just like this, and I choose to just sit, chill out and watch a bit of YouTube, and sometimes I'll get my crochet or my knitting out too. Question number 4 is, what part of the day do you like the least? And I think that has to be the morning. I really don't do mornings. I don't like getting up at the best of times. I struggle to get myself out of bed, let alone get 2 kids out of bed, fed, dressed and out of the door to school. Now they've been at school, both of them now, for many, many years, but even so, every single morning it's still the same, and I know you mums are going to be able to relate with me. Clean your teeth, brush your hair, put your clothes on, go downstairs, have your breakfast, put your shoes on, have you got your reading book? The same questions every single day. How long will it take my children to get it in their heads so I don't have to do it for them? But I guess it's part of the job description. Number 5 is the worst thing somebody said to you when you were pregnant. And I honestly don't think anyone said anything nasty to me when I was pregnant. I know when I was pregnant with Thomas, I looked absolutely absolutely awful. I was swollen, I was like a beached whale, I was spotty, I was scabby, I felt like crap. And believe it or not, I don't think anybody ever said anything nasty to me. I don't think they would have dared. But the one thing that used to bug me when I was pregnant, people would always say, I suffered with morning sickness really badly, specifically with Tom, but also with Isabel. I didn't actually vomit, but I just felt physically sick 24 hours of the day. I felt awful, but it did get to the point, if one more person told me to eat a ginger biscuit or drink ginger beer, I actually was going to do something that I may regret, to the point that I actually can't stomach ginger now because I am so absolutely sick of people telling me that I needed to eat and drink ginger. It didn't make a difference. Number 6 is a baby name that you couldn't agree on. I don't actually remember, woo, sunshine. Sorry, I'm in my conservatory. I didn't actually remember any names that we didn't really agree on. There was a name, however, that we had chosen for Isabel. We wanted to call her Boo. We really liked it, we thought it was really cute, but obviously as she got older, Boo wasn't necessarily a name that she was going to want to have. And Mr. Mac wanted to actually christen her or put on her birth certificate Boudicca, or Boudicca, however you pronounce it. And I was a little bit anti that because I was like, I'm not being funny, but no one's ever going to call her that. She's always just going to be Boo. And this was for quite some time. We were going with this name until we told my mother-in-law over Skype. And we said, we've decided on a name for the baby. This is what we're going to call her. Now, if you pretend that I am my mother-in-law and I am on Skype, this is her response. She said nothing. The face said it all. Needless to say, Izzy's now Izzy. Number 7 is, do you co-sleep? It is not something I've ever done with either of my children. I'm not against it. If you choose to co-sleep, that's fine. I like my bed. Get out. Number 8 is something you bought but never used. And again, I had to think quite hard about this. We didn't buy an awful lot of gadgets with our first baby, and therefore we didn't actually buy an awful lot of gadgets with our second. So I'm going to go with the same thing that Emily went with, except I didn't buy it, but I was gifted it, and that is the Willy TPs. So when I had a boy, I was gifted some of these little teepees. I'll pop a picture up here in case you don't know what they are. The idea being that when you change your baby's nappy, you pop them over their bits so that if they should have a wee while you're changing their nappy, it doesn't shoot in your face. Great idea in principle, but I've never used them either, Emily. Number 9 is 3 hospital bag must-haves. Now, my first one is going to be, again, the same as Emily, nice, big, comfy pants. In fact, never mind the hospital bag, I still wear nice big comfy pants even now. Number 2 and 3 are going to be controversial. I know this, but this is what I would honestly recommend. Put a bottle and a carton of ready-made formula in your hospital bag. Now, we all know breast is best, but we also all know, if we're honest, that it isn't necessarily all that easy. I didn't breastfeed my first child. He was born too early, he was too small and he was too weak, and there is no way that he could have breastfed. I did, however, express exclusively for about 2 months, which was hard work, but he then went on to formula. With my second baby, with Izzy, I wanted to try again. I wanted to try to breastfeed, but I was knackered. I'd had a traumatic birth. The last thing I needed to do was worry about trying to feed a baby before my milk had even come in. And so that night, when all the nurses and all the midwives were in their little common room having their quiet time, I snuck my bottle and I snuck my formula out of my bag. And I fed my baby a bottle. She slept like an absolute dream. I then went to the bathroom, I rinsed the bottle out, put it in a carrier bag, tied it up, put it back in my hospital bag. Nobody knew. And that morning, I latched my baby on and she fed like a dream. Now, yes, it's controversial, but you have to do what is best for you. Now, you don't have to use that bottle, you don't have to use that formula, but if it's in your bag, it saves you spending your first night as a mum in floods of tears if it's all going wrong. Number 10 is, are you a routine mum or a go with the flow mum, and what does bedtime look like? I am definitely a routine mum. Both my kids love routines. When I had Thomas, I read The Baby Whisperer, which again is a little bit controversial and really quite harsh, and I did not follow all of the things in that book. However, what I did take from it was that routine is really important. And from day one, I have had a routine in place with both my kids. They've had specific bedtimes, they've had specific routines at bedtime, and they have specific routines throughout the day as well. And they do thrive on it, to the point that when we go on holiday, we struggle because they're so used to their routines that they actually can't cope with just switching off when I say, do you know what, you can do what you like. Bedtime for us is fairly straightforward. We don't faff around with, you know, bards and stories and all of that anymore because they're a little bit older. But for Izzy, my smallest, about 5 to 7, the alarm goes off on my phone. She needs to put her pyjamas on. So she goes and puts her pyjamas on. She is then allowed 10 minutes of either just popping onto her iPad or reading a book. And then I will either read her a story or she will read her own story for 10-15 minutes, and then she's normally going to sleep by about 7:30. For Tom, he is much older, so he can cope for himself. So he has a 7:30 stop chatting to your mates on YouTube or Xbox or computer or Hangouts or whatever it is he's doing. So he likes to play online with his friends from school. So 7:30 there is no more interaction with friends. By 8 o'clock there is no more electricals. He needs to be in his pyjamas, and from 8 o'clock to 8:30 he reads to himself, or if he doesn't want to read then he has to do something creative. So he could build Lego, he could draw, not that he ever does, but he has to do something that doesn't involve an electrical device, and just wind down and chill out. And then 8:30 is lights out and sleep. Now that changes on a Friday. They can go to bed a little bit later, and also on a Saturday, and sometimes we might go to the cinema or go out for something to eat. But on a school night, that's our routine. Number 11 is, what type of labour did you have and what pain relief did you have? So with Thomas, I had a very early labour. He arrived 7 weeks early. So it was a little bit frightening, although being a woman, I think, and just doing what my body wanted to do, I didn't get too stressed out about it. I just did what I needed to do. It was a fairly quick labour. I think my waters broke in the evening about 9 o'clock. I went straight to the hospital, obviously, because it was early. Things started kicking off properly about midnight. Had about 4 or 5 hours of fairly progressive labour, but nothing too harsh, nothing too intense. I didn't really have any pain relief. I used a birthing ball, sat in the birthing ball and kind of rocked through most of my labour. Right towards the end I tried a bit of gas and air, but I got all tingly in the face, which for me is a sign that I'm getting a migraine. So I instantly just didn't enjoy that, didn't want it, so I went without. But in fairness, he was a very tiny baby, so it probably did hurt as much as a big baby, but the actual squeezing out bit, maybe not quite so much. With Izzy, again, exactly the same labour, same time frame, everything else. Nothing was any different. But with her, that last hour was really pretty intense and pretty rapid. Everything seemed to just happen so quickly. I did go for the gas and air with her, and I allowed myself to just keep going past that fuzzy face feeling. And then it was hilarious. I was doing the whole classic, you need to try some of this, it's really good stuff, which was fun. Unfortunately, labour was great, she popped out brilliant, but then I did have a really big bleed, so I was rushed off to intensive care and surgery, and I don't really remember much about it, but it was all pretty scary for Mr. Mac. And by the time I came back to my room and was finally reunited with my baby, I'd had a blood transfusion and all sorts of other things, so it was a little bit frightening. Hence, I'm pretty sure you can understand why I could not be doing with breastfeeding when I'd lost a whole ton of blood, had a whole ton of blood pumped back into me, and just delivered a child. Number 12 is, have you been mum shamed? And yes I have, in a very big way. When Tom was 4, his letter for his entry to infant school arrived in the post, and all the stuff from the school came through, and it said that the first 2 weeks of term the children would be doing half days only, and then they would go to school for a full day straight away. That's pretty commonplace. At that time I was working, albeit part-time, but I was working 3 full days. I didn't have any holiday, and there wasn't actually any leeway for me to be able to take that time off work so that he could do his half days at school. He'd previously been at nursery, and he'd been at nursery for whole days, from sort of 7:30 in the morning till 7 o'clock at night, because I've been working full time, and he was more than used to long days. So I wrote to the school and said, can they do full days? This seems silly. They came back and said no. I then looked up the details, and according to our local authority, it's the school's decision should they wish to offer half days for the first 2 weeks, but actually legally children are entitled to full days at school. So I went back to the school, spoke to them, and they then changed the plan that your children would go full-time straight away for the first 2 weeks. If you should choose to take your child home at lunchtime for the first 2 weeks, you were allowed to do that. That sorted me out perfectly. Tom started school, he had a lovely time. At the time, I was a member of it wasn't Facebook, it was a forum. It was a traditional forum. Forums don't necessarily exist as much nowadays with the creation of Facebook groups. But I posted my trials and tribulations in that group. Oh my goodness, was I shot down. Verbally, the amount of mums and women who shot me down and told me that I should be disgusted in myself, that I should want to spend all the time I possibly could with my child before they went into full-time education, that those final 2 weeks of bonding time were absolutely imperative in the way that my child would grow up and remember his start to school, all sorts of stuff. They absolutely slammed me. At no point did any of these people actually realise that there was nothing I could do about it. I had to work. I had to work because I needed to earn an income to keep a roof over my head, to keep my child clothed and fed. Now, I will say that every single one of these mums that slammed me down didn't work. They were all stay-at-home mums, and I take my hat off to stay-at-home mums. If you can do it, fantastic. If you can give your child that level of loveliness that you are always there for them, fantastic. Hats off to you, my love. I couldn't. My kids are perfectly okay. So yes, I was mum shamed. I came off that forum, I left it, I removed every single person that had slated me from my Facebook feed, and it was the best thing that I could ever have done. Number 13 is the biggest challenge you have faced as a mum. And I think it's the same challenge that all of us do. It's juggling all the balls. At the end of the day, like I said, you have to work to keep a roof over your head. You have to make sure your children are happy, clothed, fed, well educated. And you have to do all these things all at the same time, and it can be really, really hard to do all of that and not allow yourself to just get totally and utterly buried in all the crap, so that you're just tired and knackered and not being the best mum that you can be. And it is really hard. I think being a mum is one of the hardest jobs out there. It really doesn't help when you see all these amazing ideals of perfect parents and perfect motherhood all over social media, because all you do as a parent is compare yourself to others. Number 14 is the best bit of advice you have ever been given as a mum, and what advice would you give a mum? Emily's bit of best advice was, just like I said, do not compare yourself to other mums. And my bit of advice that I would give to you is listen to your body. You know best. Nobody else knows your child like you know your child. So when you're in labour, if you feel that something's not right, go with your gut. If you want to do something a certain way, do what you want to do. You know your body better than anybody else. As for your child, again, you know your children better than anybody else. You know what they need, and as a mother, that instinct is so strong. Listen to it. your own advice is quite often the very best advice that you can take. As for me, good advice that I've been given as a mum, that message from a lot of my mum friends, and that is the way I have always chosen to parent my children. But I think a little tip that I never knew when I became a new mum, and now is common knowledge, is the whole Calpol ibuprofen thing. So my children, when they get a temperature, I'll give them Calpol or paracetamol for my American viewers. Well, you don't even call it that, do you? Tylenol, I think you call it. Give them that and it will take their temperature down. But after a couple of hours, it starts to creep back up, and they're not allowed more of that drug until they've had 4 hours between doses. However, ibuprofen or Nurofen, which is our brand here, and again, I think your brand is Advil, you can give them that in between. So paracetamol, 2 hours, ibuprofen, 2 hours, paracetamol, 2 hours. That, someone telling me that when my children were little was an absolute godsend. Thomas had an awful lot of infections when he was little, and then he went on to suffer quite badly from tonsillitis. Izzy gets tonsillitis all the time too. And so that is an absolute godsend. So learn the 2-hour drug rule. Number 15 is, who is your mum crush and who do you tag? My mum crush isn't on YouTube. She's a very good friend of mine, the lovely Tade. She has fought postnatal depression and she is out there fighting the good fight and trying to help as many people as she can also deal with postnatal depression. She has an amazing daughter who is gorgeous, funny, intellectual, who I absolutely love and would happily take under my wing and look after as my very own. She has done an amazing job of being a mum despite going through all of those trials and tribulations, and she is now working for herself too, after giving up the daily grind of working for the machine. So I'm super proud of her, and she is my ultimate mum crush. However, as far as vloggers and YouTubers go, obviously Emily Norris. Really enjoy watching her channel, so I wouldn't have seen this mum tag, but I think it has to be Louise Pentland. Absolutely love her videos. They really make me laugh. Her Instagram feed is fantastic, and she writes a really good book too. So over to you. If you've watched this channel and you're a mum, I would love you to answer the questions. I will pop them in the description below. Thank you very much for watching.